to Prepare Like a Pro Live Chats. My name's Jack McLean. I created Prepare Like a Pro early in the year. We are a strength and conditioning business that specialises in athletic development for football. Lachlan's quick on. Check UAE. Go, bang. Sending one out. Dylan, thanks for sending your question in, GT. Hey, mate.
G'day, mate.
Going on, mate? Yourself?
Yeah, good. You hear me nicely?
Yeah, thanks for jumping on.
How are you?
Yourself?
Yeah, very well, mate. Yeah, ticking along well. The last couple of days of holidays and then back to it.
Good festive season, recharged, ready to get
mate, it was actually, it wasn't very festive. It was very relaxed, to be honest, mate. Didn't do anything at all. Just put the feet up, enjoy some quiet time. We've got a baby due in March, so I think it'll probably be the last time I can do absolutely nothing without anything annoying me. So we'll see how we go, but it was very good, mate. Nice and relaxing.
Yeah, fantastic. Congratulations as well. Very exciting.
Thank you very much, mate. Yeah, we'll see how we go.
Well, do a bit of an intro. You're quick, mate. I didn't even get my intro out before.
That's why I was in the background for you, mate. I was going to let you do it.
Yeah. So we'll do a quick little intro for those that don't know you. So Lachlan has been working in the fitness industry for 17 years now. So you can call yourself a leader in the field.
You can if you want, mate. I'm still young.
I'll call you. I'll give you. Yeah, I reckon over 15 years you've got to be. So yeah, working with general pop as well as elite athlete. After completing your bachelor's, you did your honours thesis in sports science. Spent 8 years, and this is probably where you got a fair bit of fame with your work at GWS Giants. I certainly started to see your work there with razor curls and Nordics and your progressions with things in your plyos and things like that. So it'd be cool to bring back that chapter in your career. Yeah. And then that was post AIS AFL Academy and the New South Wales ACT Academy. And then your most recent elite role in sports science was head of athletic performance. That's the same as high performance?
Yeah,
Yep. And now you're in the private sector, full-time co-owner of Athletes Authority, which is a nice big gym in Sydney, doing good things from what I can see from Faye. I haven't visited yet. It'd be cool to see what you're doing. But how long have you been running Athletes Authority now?
Mate, I've been partnered with my business partner Carl in that for 3.5, almost 4 years now. So I started that the investment side of it with Carl and the athletic development side of it when I was at the Giants. Sort of the last year that I was at the Giants was pretty much the year that I've always wanted to expand. I always knew that the pro sport wasn't going to be everything for me. I can't see myself with 3 kids still answering the phone calls of a head coach. So I think it was always my plan to have that private side of it. But also knew I couldn't just step out of professional sports straight into a gym and have 100 athletes come straight to me. It's just not what happens. So trying to get something going on the side was always a plan. It was really good. And obviously I was lucky enough to have a phenomenal business partner like Carl that ran the show for so long while I was in professional sport and let me do what I need to do there. And now we've just sort of grown to a size that there's one of my athletes there, the Muppet. It's grown to a size now that just for me, I needed to come across. It just wasn't going to continue off a single man's leadership. He was slowly wearing thin of it. So it was good to get across and mate, it's been unreal. I've definitely come into a very odd time where we sort of rolled into it and there was, we had our 2 head coaches poached when I came on board. So I took on their roles and we rolled into the fires. We had a big storm that knocked out one of the power lines. So we had a blackout for 2 weeks. We had no power. We then rolled into what was then COVID. And
this is all 2020, isn't it?
Exactly. It was back to back. So it was phenomenal to come into it. But to be honest, it's probably a good time because I don't know what it would have been like if I had been still at Parramatta as well as having a foot in Athletes Authority. It just would have been a nightmare. It would have been hubbed up in the pro sector on reduced money and then also trying to have a facility that didn't have me to just take on the roles. Myself and Carl took on so many roles over the COVID period to make sure that we were safe. If we had staff there, we had to support as well on top of that. Now, obviously, we do have staff, but more staff would have definitely been a tough situation. But all done and dusted now, mate. Moving on, hopefully push out the other side.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And we'll get I did the story a little bit early in terms of the guys that sent through the question. So those questions don't expire. GT, which we had a good beer, us 3, GT and ASCA last year conference. That feels like, longer than a year ago now. But favourite book to read, GT's asked. I think he's watching as well. That's a classic question.
I don't know why he's bothered to ask that because he doesn't read himself. The story behind that is he applied for a role, and I one of my feedback to him, the fact he didn't read was something that hurt him. So my favourite book,
still doing damage,
is tell GT there's too many for him to catch up on.
Love it. It's got a story behind it as well. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I thought, he's been Yeah, I was surprised by GT asked that question, but that makes sense. Jimmy has written, well, I'll click it so it pops up at the bottom. What is your approach to training around low back pain, Jimmy?
Yeah, look, it's an open-ended question there because it depends what the issue is at the back. From is it disky? Is there a pathology there? Is it non-specific? Is it neural? I think the first and foremost is find out what aggravates. You need to find out what movements, what positions, what things aggravate it. Lucky enough that we've got some great physios that work at Athletes Authority, and one in particular, Alan, has dealt with a lot of neural back pain, which is quite common, probably more common than a lot of people think, because it's certainly the pain presentation doesn't always feel neural to the person, but often it can be neural. So one of the key things that we look at is a lot of neural flossing and doing some really good neural mobility work around that low back. Bottom line is, as a summary for the whole, is we try and load as much as we can. If that means we can't load through flexion to start because it sets them off, then we don't do that. If we can't load an extension, then we don't do that. But we find ways that we can load. So like I said, depends on what the issue is. But ultimately, we look at mobility, we look at neural flossing, and also look at loading in the best part we can and steadily progress from there. When it comes to parts and areas that do set it off, so for example, if flexion is something that sets it off, then we'll start to try and put them through flexion without any load, obviously, when they start, and then build from there. The worst thing that we can do, both mentally and physically, is completely avoid a pattern, and there's always ways to do it. In the AFL, we had a lot of boys that just had general lumbar tightness just from running loads and everything like that, especially if they had a previous injury, whether it be a stress fracture, which is quite common in younger AFL players, sort of a lumbar stressy. Even if that's been healed and recovered, they're very hesitant to load. And one of the worst things you can do is just avoid that for the rest of their career. So we would certainly progress them in certain ways. It might be as simple as, if it's a stress option, getting them started on the leg press for some nice simple load, then progressing into a trap bar deadlift, and then progressing from there. If it's a dumbbell RDL, from there you're looking at more conventional dead. So we would always try and get them back. But if you were to take them straight to conventional dead, and look, I've made the mistake when I was younger with different athletes that have had back pain, and they've been fine. It's been 3 years since they've had back pain, and I'm thinking, yeah, it's fine, let's jump into it. But mentally, they haven't recovered, and they just feel a little bit of tightness. We all know what our backs feel like when we start to load heavy. You can have the healthiest back, but you still get that erector DOMS that just, people really feel all the time. And if you've had a stressy previously, mentally, it just sets them off. So a steady progression of load is probably the key thing. Yeah, fantastic. Awesome, mate. Thanks for that. Let's go through your sort of story of your career, mate. Take us back to the start. At what age did you recognise that you had a passion for sort of fitness, I guess we'll call it, or strength and conditioning? Well, my mother was a PT, an old school aerobics instructor, so I always had a little bit in me. And I reckon when I was a fairly early developer, I was about this size when I was in year 8. So I used to dominate quite easily, and I thought the career in football is where I'm going. Year 10, I realised, Jesus, maybe I'm just about the same height as everyone. And then before I knew it, I was a midfield height with the endurance capacity of a tall forward. So for me, it probably wasn't the ideal setup, but still always passionate about it. And it was probably year 11, year 12, or year 11 really, where I started to realise I read a book called Body for Life by Bill Phillips. For those people that are about my age, probably would have seen it come out. It was a very bodybuilding orientated book, and I read it from cover to cover, and I didn't read in high school at all. I hated it. So after reading that, I thought, geez, there must be something to this if I can go cover to cover with this, and loved it. And I've been training anyway, just generally. And did my Cert 3, Cert 4 over the year 11, 12 break, and then through year 12, and started PTing straight away, and just loved it ever since, mate. So for me, it was probably the age-old story of you were an athlete, tried it, and I probably was an early realisation in high school. Some people keep going through university or college, but for me, it was probably a year 10 realisation that probably not to where I need to be. And I'm sure a stronger-minded person probably could have pushed through and maybe made it, but for me, I love training. I love the process. I love learning more about it. I love helping other people with it. So for me, that was just sort of the route I took. Yeah, fantastic. So your mum was a personal trainer back then, or was it? She was a typical 1980s aerobics instructor. She had the fluoro pink, the tights, everything involved, the leg warmers. It's all coming back. So she had a fair crack. She had a dance go with it as well, so which is something I inherited, which is good to hear. Good for the Instagram followers. That's awesome. So PT. Were you was it a Globo gym? Was it a PT studio? Well, I did some general PT on the side for a year 12, just in parks, and then went out of a place called Living Well, which is now Fitness First, but it was the Hilton-owned gym chain. So that was for a couple of months, and then got involved with Fitness First, where it was you pay your rent and you do your own thing, which I actually really liked. So I had a coach there, Paul Meldrum, who was sort of a mentor of mine when I was there, which gave me sort of a rent reduction and built from there. And I was at Fitness First for 4 years almost, 4 years in North Ryde around the corner. So it was, mate, it was, for me, it was the best place to make all my mistakes. Hopefully none of my old clients. Certainly it was, for me, something that allowed me to, learn how to program, learn how to connect with people. Like I was a 17-year-old high school graduate, still living at home, and not a care in the world at that stage. And I had 40-year-old mothers that were going through divorces and stuff. And it was a fairly quick learning curve to how to be a bit of a chameleon in talking to different people and being able to connect with different people, because ultimately my strong suit's connecting with football players, because that's what I did. But to be thrown into that early in my career, fantastic, because I think it made me a far better coach as I got older and have a little bit more to talk about in life experiences when I can be a 17-year-old and sometimes just about listening to what they have and their problems. So I was a bit of a pop psychologist, to be honest. Yeah,
absolutely, mate. That resonates with me. I did the exact same thing. Fitness First on Amel Road. Yep. I was 19. Yeah. So same deal. And you think back, you're like, what the hell was I doing? Like paying, I think it was $250 a week for a year contract with no clients. Yeah. And but you learn business pretty quick. You learn people skills pretty quick. You learn how to sell pretty quick. So bang on. You get some good.
Exactly. And back then it was, you had to sell. You got your little triple packs. So you had opportunities to come in. You have to get on the floor. You have to get out. It doesn't come to you. And I find that some strength conditioning coaches that I deal with that have come straight out of university haven't had that. They kind of park themselves and expect athletes or expect clients to come to them or expect the company to do that. Now, there's obviously going to be a part of the company where they have to deliver clients to them. But as a coach, you've got to learn how to actually attract people, and you've got to go out and get that, because they're not going to just come to you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good message. There'll be a few S&Cs no doubt watching. So I'll add personal trainers. So, and then... So obviously there was an interest, I imagine, if you wanted to be an elite athlete, I imagine you wanted to be an S&C in sport. Was that something? When did that sort of come?
To be honest, it wasn't my first thing. No, I was happy just kicking around as a PT. I was enjoying the time. I got right in, again, depending on how old you are, if you're listening, got into Paul Check, back in those days when they were running a lot of courses.
Holistic lifestyle coach.
Yeah, quite the holistic side, which was, don't get me wrong, mate. To be honest, a lot of my knowledge now is grounded in a lot of that. It's fantastic info. There's some parts that are a little bit skewed, but generally it was fantastic. And for me, there was times where I was going to go down that path, open a bit of a PT clinic and go down the more holistic side of things. But I started working with a couple of athletes that were, at that time, they had a New South Wales scholarship program to try and get more AFL athletes drafted out of New South Wales. So clubs had sort of a free hit when they were 14, 15 to scholarship them for a few years and have sort of a free draft kit at them. So I started working with a couple of those guys who were under a coach of mine at the time at Pennant Hills where I was playing. And they saw some good results, and the head of the New South Wales program there saw that and said, do you want to come give a talk? And so I came down, I spoke on running mechanics and stuff like that. And they loved it at the time and happened to be expanding their role into having a strength conditioning coach come on board. So I sort of pitched a couple of options that could be good for them. And mate, they loved it, and which was great. So I got my start there. And when I started that, I literally came home from being offered the job, and I thought, fuck, maybe this is actually a career that I could do. I started research. I knew there were strength conditioning coaches with teams, obviously, but I hadn't really ever thought about going down that route. And I didn't have a degree at the time. I thought, geez, if I want to go any further, I probably need to get a degree. So literally registered that night, happened to be perfect timing straight in, and started at ACU the following month as an undergraduate and had a crack then. And mate, we sort of grew from there, which was great.
Yeah, fantastic. Awesome. So the athletes that you're working with, were they members of the gym that you're at, or the
players at the club I was playing at there?
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, cool. And then along your way, have you had a mentor for years? Have you had mentors, or is it more self-research? What do you think?
Yeah, a number of mentors. My two biggest mentors would be my two managers that have been through the Giants. First one was John Quinn. For those who don't know, he's a track and field coach. I was at Essendon for 10 years and came to the Giants. He was my first real mentor that was also my manager. Previous to that, at the New South Wales program, there wasn't really many people above me. A guy called James Veal was working at the AIS program, and to be honest, he probably really influential on me that I had to sort of sort after there, because with the New South Wales program, I was basically it. So obviously I learned a lot from the coaches there as far as skills coaches goes, and how to interact and run programs and stuff like that. But James Veal was a fantastic mentor help me transition into that strength conditioning side of it. But then when I was at the Giants, Quinny moulded a hell of a lot of what I do today, especially my plyometric love and going through that. Like that was pretty much all Quinny that governed the way I program and set up a lot of that. And then, then my next one of my biggest would be David Joyce, who was my manager after Quinny. So lucky enough to have some pretty epic managers there, which have helped me along the way. And that's probably the major ones that I've had that have really governed what I do. But to be honest, mate, there's everyone you work with and every person you come in contact with, even players and stuff like that, have been fantastic. Like coaches at the clubs, as in Leon Cameron, Kevin Sheedy, that were there, governed a lot of ways I do things. One of the biggest ones, Brad Arthur at Parramatta Eels, was fantastic to work with. That just the way he thought and the things he let me do, but also the things that he sort of pressured and pushed and stuff like that. Just it creates you as a coach, mate, when you get pushed in each direction and a lot of things that you take for granted and you just want to implement, and then they challenge you on it. You're like, geez, I hadn't even thought you'd have an issue with this, but yet let's go for it, and you go toe to toe and stuff like that's what governs and makes you a great coach and probably trusts what you do. I think that back and forth is what means that I can tell someone this is what I think and this is what I want to do and have confidence in it. Yeah, so I think they're probably hard to name one, but there's a full selection there.
Yeah, fantastic. That's some great guys that have helped shape you along the way from different disciplines as well, which is pretty cool to hear. For the footballers that are watching, like the young footballers, what are some important things? Let's say you're getting a new client, he comes into Athletes Authority, he's a young 16-year-old, and he wants to develop himself to help his game. What are some of the things that you sort of work with, developing footballers? What are your pillars, I guess, or your priorities?
Yeah. Well, it depends what they're missing. I think as a whole, it doesn't matter whether you're a footballer, lacrosse player, and anything in between. At the end of the day, we run them through a series of assessments to try and work out how we're going to influence them the best. For our program, if they're an under 16, they'll fall a little bit more into our emerging athlete program or our LTAD program, far more general and focusing on key pillars of everything from basic strength movements, compound movements, good landing mechanics, good change of direction and decel work. Then when we start to graduate into the more specific, where we start to get a little bit more tailored to their actual sport, and example, we use footballers. So if we're looking at, say, an AFL player for them, depending on key position, midfield, where they're going, looking at a couple of their key resilience side of things, so obviously high-speed running, hamstring work, hip flexor work, Achilles calf, these type of things that we'll start to look at really nailing to make sure that we can, I hate the word bulletproof, but try and make that as resilient as possible. But realistically, we start to look at their makeup and work out, are they people that are going to benefit from more strength or are they going to benefit from more explosive power? We look at a number of ratios that we use with our testing equipment to decide, right, what part of the curve are we surfing? And when I say that, force velocity curve, looking at whether athletes are weak and powerful, which is actually quite hard. You get a lot of Indigenous players. I work with a number of Indigenous players at the Giants that were very weak but very explosive, and it's sort of like the engine that's got a crap chassis. You take a Ferrari engine and put it in a Yaris, that engine's probably going to pull that Yaris frame out of whack. And that's where we see a lot of these little niggly things with Indigenous players that are quite explosive and zippy, but they just don't have the muscle to be able to hold on to that tendon. The tendon's got to anchor somewhere, and bone and muscle are the two major areas, and often it's the muscle that gives up. So for that type of thing, we start to look at how we strengthen that player to improve their weakness, but also they're going to